Today's Hiwatt soundbite is all about building a sample bank for a killer remix. Well, I'm collaborating on a remix this week with my very good friend and bandmate, Bon Harris. The track we're working on is from our very own band, Blackline. The song's called Layers. And essentially, we're just putting together a remix that's going to be included in a future digital release that we've got coming up. Well, Bon, for the last couple of months, has been on tour with Nights Are Ebb in Europe. And I don't know how he made time for this, but somehow over the past month, Bon made time while on tour to dig into this remix. And I'm so excited because he just sent me the tracks. He basically put together what looks like about a 25-minute, super extended club remix of this song, right? Well, I've just put it up and I've been listening, and the very first thing that I noticed about this track were how few references there are to the original song. Now, I'm a big fan of taking remixes into a whole new world, but there's also an aspect of that connection to the original that I really love to maintain somehow. So I'm going to share a technique that I use in almost every remix, but specifically in a track where I'm trying to gain that connection back to the original. Well, just like many of you, when we're commissioned to do one of these remixes, certainly we're going to be supplied with either a multi-track of the original multi-track session, or at the very least, we're going to be provided with some stem mixes from that session. You know, maybe drum parts and vocal parts and things isolated to at least stems. My goal is to create 25 or 30 stereo samples that I can export individually, put them into a folder, and then ultimately open up a sampler program and load those stereo samples into a sampler. You know, there's something about setting up those original parts as samples that you can play off a keyboard. It'll absolutely change the way that you build remixes. I promise you, if you haven't been doing this, this is going to be something that is very, very exciting to you. Let's open a session and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, so I've just opened up the multi-track session that I'm using as the source for this remix. Now, in this case, I had direct access to it because I was the original mixer, but in most cases, I'm just opening up a random multi-track session of someone else's. Now, what I love to do with these multi-track source sessions is literally go through almost every track and just listen for almost anything that I think would be useful in my remix. I'm just putting up my radar and I'm sort of listening to things and I'm just waiting for that. Hey, there it is. That'll be cool. That'll be cool. For instance, a vocal track just like this. I want kill, I want take, I want kill. Well, now that's a cool part, and I'm probably going to want that available to me in my remix. And once I have that piece tracked, I'll go find something else. I'll just unsolo that. So as I'm creating these individual samples, I know I'm only working on a copy of the session anyway, so I just go ahead and make any kind of adjustments that I need to do so that I know that all of these samples that we end up with are going to be kind of relatively with the same kind of gain structure. Okay, so once I've gone through the entire session and I feel like I've extracted just about everything that I'm going to want for my remix, just go ahead and close that session. Okay, so I've closed that source multi-track session out, and I've got a folder here that now has 35 stereo samples in it. I got a little bit carried away. So created 35 different stereo samples that I could consider loops, so to speak. My very next goal is to create a sample bank with all of those. Now, you should use whatever sampler that you're most familiar with. My go-to sampler is Motu's Mach 5. This is one that I'm well vested into. I've been working on this platform for well over 20 years. So I just load Mach 5's standalone application and I select all of the samples in this folder and I literally just drag them down to C0, I call it, right there, and I let it go. As soon as I let go of that button, it asks me, how do I want to add those keys? You know, do you want them on every white key or do you want them on chromatic? I always just select chromatic so that it's like every note. Boom. So now, if I reach up to this keyboard, so once I've created that sample bank in that standalone version of Mach 5, I'll go ahead and just save the program in samples, close that thing up, and now I can go back to my remix track, the actual track that I'm working on today. You know, when you've got all of these parts just sitting here on a keyboard, you can create brand new things that never existed in that original track, right? I mean, you're gonna have a total blast assembling remixes when you've got access to all these samples like just on a keyboard like that. Unreal, so fun, check it out. This is so much fun to build a remix. Oh my gosh, this should be illegal. So the next remix that you're commissioned to do, go ahead and build yourself a big sample bank from that original source session, and then use that as a source to create a killer remix.